I know that you pork producers have felt a little beat up, perhaps, over the last couple of decades. It seems that the market has not been going your way. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, and I spend all of my life tracking what consumers are eating, what they're putting on their plates. The time has never been better for pork and pork products. The trends are aligning. The market is coming to you. And what my objectives are today are very straightforward. This is simple stuff. I want to talk about those opportunities. I am going to talk a little bit as well about some of the challenges that you face, but I want to make some comments and perhaps some suggestions on how to deal with those challenges. But the bottom line here is my bottom line. This is all about ideas that will boost pork consumption, how to bring your products in line with what consumers are looking for. My agenda is equally simple. You can see I've got sort of 2 sets of 5 topics. And this is what public speakers call a funnel approach. In other words, I'm going to start with kind of the big picture, and then I'm going to talk about how that relates to pork, but then I'm going to get very, very, very specific as I go through my material. So, my big 5 strategic issues, well, it doesn't get any bigger than this. How about this extraordinary trend towards protein and what I'm calling here protein power? You can see some of this data. Retail grocery product claims have jumped over 50%. Food service menus, mentions on the menu jumped over 60%. The U.S. is the largest market for high protein products. By and large, most nutritionists would say that Americans are not protein deprived, but we want more. You see on the right-hand side, 2 product categories in particular from the retail grocery store. High protein, Greek yogurt, and energy bars. Those 2 categories combined, according to a lot of supermarket analysts, have kept that mature, slow-growing grocery segment afloat and profitable over the last 3 or 4 years. Last year, the supermarket segment as a whole grew less than 1%. But Greek yogurt, which is now quite mature, grew closer to 10%. So you can see those numbers. By the way, why are consumers so interested in protein? I mean, what does it deliver? Well, we know that it delivers on energy, and we know that it contributes to muscle building, and we also know that it presents the satiety factor. It helps us feel fuller longer. All very, very attractive. As a result, more than half of all adults say they want more protein in their diets. And you can see in my bar chart here, steadily moving up. These are consumers who say that they want to read labels now that promise additional protein. What's underlying all of this? I mean, what's happening in our food world today? Well, you folks know that there are 3 macronutrients, right? There's fat. I'm going to talk about fat a little bit later on. What have we done for the last 50 years? We've demonized fat, right? So fat, up, get it out. What about carbohydrates? Who understands what's going on with that? You have good carbohydrates, you have bad. You have simple, you have complex. Don't get me going on gluten. Nearly 30% of American consumers are avoiding gluten. They have no idea what it is. So carbohydrates, very problematic, right? Get them out. What does that leave? It leaves protein as the good macronutrient. So in grocery stores, we're reading labels. Here we've got whole segments of animal agriculture that are hooking into this. This is what's called a screenshot. I took this off of the web page for the dairy industry. And here's another reason why I think from your point of view, the protein trend is so darn positive. Can you see that kind of headline there? Protein Fight Club. Now, who do you think they're addressing with that kind of a promotional hook? A nice baby boomer lady? No. No, thank you. I am a nice baby boomer lady, but that's not who they're talking to. They're talking to a male audience, and specifically a young male audience. Why should you be excited about this? Because historically, when we've had diet and nutrition trends, particularly diet trends and fads in this country, they've played to a female audience. You haven't been able to address men with this. Protein all of a sudden has opened the door. So it crosses genders, and it also crosses age groups. From the demographic perspective, young people respond to a protein appeal, but so do aging consumers. So you've got restaurants jumping all over this. Here's Taco Bell. This is their power, and they use the term power. Now, I read menus for a living. That's my core business, menu trends, and the power thing has really come on strongly over the last 36 months or so. Taco Bell naturally playing now to a younger male audience. These are products that have over 20 grams of protein apiece, less than 500 calories. I think you probably know a chain called Panera Bread. Historically, Panera Bread's audience has been females, particularly young moms with kids. They introduced a power menu. They have been able to draw some traffic from men, but they're finding that power doesn't turn off women, right? We all want to be powerful. So the good news, again, just keeps getting better and better, because when you talk to consumers, right, consumers are saying, hey, protein is good, we want more. Where do you get it from? We get it from meat. We view meat as the superior source of protein. You see the top three here. More than 60% of American consumers eat an animal protein a day, daily. More than 60%. And you can see that 50% believe animal protein is the best source of protein. The big three here in terms of animal proteins, it's beef, chicken, fish. Opportunity for pork, because pork was mentioned along with ham, along with bacon, but it came further down the list. It was on the list. That's the good news, because I'll tell you what was missing from this list, and that's plant proteins. There's another, this is from a group called NPD. There was another huge, much bigger study from another group called Acosta, came out about the same time. American consumers generally do not acknowledge plant proteins as viable protein sources. I mention that to you because you folks in this room know that right now there are a lot of folks in the plant protein community who are advocating very strongly for plant proteins against animal proteins, but you have consumers on your side. I think that this is a very good thing. So what does it mean in terms of bottom lining this for you? Well, there's a real opportunity here to exploit the connection between pork and protein. And you want to think about how to get that story out. The good news, this is another bit of sort of a consumer behavior. The good news is you can emphasize what's in the food, not what you've taken out, right? Dietary math. What does the American consumer hate? Here's the product. We have subtracted the sugar, we've subtracted the salt, we've subtracted the fat. Consumers are really put off by that. You don't have to worry, because now you can talk about a product that is naturally full of the good stuff. Will there be a backlash to this? Of course. Of course, I'm going to talk a little bit about how our food system has become so politicized. You know right now that somebody, dare I say it, a group of trial lawyers, class action lawyers, has, got somebody doing some research somewhere to say protein is bad. It's not. And in fact, I'm seeing some commentary now in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, as you talk about the aging baby boomer. There is some sense that we may change guidelines to suggest that an aging consumer actually needs even more protein to maintain health and vitality. So is this a plus for pork? Yeah, it's a double plus. This has long legs. It's not going to go away. Here's another plus, it seems to me. This also relates to demographic change, to behavioral changes. It's what I'm calling snackification. It's the notion that more and more Americans do not eat 3 square meals a day, right? Those conventional meal periods have kind of been upended. We're all caught up in this 24/7 lifestyle. I'm going to read this to you. I don't know that you folks can all see this, but this was some Technomic research, and you can see that very top bar The consumers who agree that I usually skip or replace one meal a day with snacks is 42%. And then if you drop down to the third bar, here are consumers who say, I usually skip or replace 2 meals a day with snacks. That's 9%. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom 1%, say, I never have a regular meal. I just snack. Snackification. What's driving this? Well, it's the young millennial group. Now, millennials, lots and lots of them. You know, we've got this kind of generational barbell in this country. I know you're all aware of it, but at the one end, you've got this huge baby boom, and at the other end, you've got this equally huge millennials. The millennials, roughly 18 to 34. In between, you have a group. My apologies to any of you in that group. If you're not a boomer or you're not a Gen Y or a millennial, you're called Gen X. Sorry about that. But millennials, 18 to roughly 34, super snackers. Well, sure, because so many of them are on college campuses. I mean, they're eating whenever they want. They consider themselves to be time-crunched multitaskers. They expect convenience foods on demand. And here is the big takeaway. And if any of you saw USA Today, the newspaper, yesterday morning, it was a front page article because these millennials talk about fresh, real, and less processed. Hello, pork. Fresh, real, and less processed. And then they act on it. They're willing to pay more for it. It is part of their typical consumption pattern. And as a result, we have all kinds of millennial entrepreneurs who are coming online to meet this demand for snacking whenever you want. This is strictly a digital business enterprise. It's been very, very successful. It's called NatureBox. You subscribe to this online. There are 120 good-for-you snack choices. Comes in the mail one time a month. I don't know if I'd want all my snacks coming one time a month, because then what happens 2 days later when I've eaten all my snacks? But the point is that they're helpful small bites, and they're talking to millennials, and they're going around grocery store distribution. I was, about a month ago, when I was preparing this material for you on an airplane, and I pulled this ad out of a magazine, and it's the same thing, except it's a different brand. It's called Graze Box, and it tells you how to go online and to sign up, and it talks about protein, punchy protein snacks right here. But what I wanted to read to you, and by the way, I thought it was interesting, this is a print ad, but it was actually promoting a digital service, so we got a mix of sort of old media and new media. But here's the promise. Now think about this millennial group. The snacks from this source, no GMOs, no artificial flavors or colors, no high fructose corn syrup, and 0 grams of trans fat. So millennials are interested, but I'll tell you, boomers and Gen Xers, please, I kind of get a kick out of this. Here's our millennials. We're so time crunched. Kids, wait till you grow up. And, you know, you get jobs in the real world. Then the real crunch begins. So we're taking small bites too, those of us who are not millennials. But we tend to have a range of demands. Part of it, and you can see from the RB slide on the right, snack and save. As we've gone through this terrible 7-year endless recession, the desire to save some money. Well, little snack portions will do that. If you want to save calories, they will do that for you as well. Can be grazeable. In other words, you can get lots of little things and just try a little of everything. You can share if you like. And yes, absolutely, these are grab and go. So if you want it for convenience, if you need to be eating in your car, they accommodate. The opportunity here is, again, it seems to me, the next generation of protein-packed slides. Protein-packed foods. I'm so sorry. I'm looking at my slide here. Protein-packed foods. You see on the right, here we go, those stalwarts from the supermarket, right? Greek yogurt, these protein bars on the left from McDonald's and many others, these little snackables. But where do we go now? Is it a double protein? I mean, are you going to enhance the protein? Is it more functionality built around the protein? I don't know, but I do believe that there's opportunities. and again, I think the implications here are largely positive. It's going to mean a little bit of a mind shift, I think, for you folks, because my sense is that you pork producers, along with most folks in America engaged in animal agriculture, tend to think about the center of the plate, as we say in food service. Well, now we're talking about getting away from that. It's going to mean a reconsideration of things like positioning and portioning and packaging. But there is opportunity here. And the great news, again, this is right in your wheelhouse. Consumers want both good and good tasting. Hello, pork. Now, my last two thoughts here, just to kind of keep in mind, everybody's been making a huge deal out of snacking. Will we continue to snack like crazy and not have 3 meals a day as millennials age and form their own households, right, when they have children? And then the last, monitor for changes if, I should say, as I'm being hopeful here, household income recovers. We have now, household income is not recovering, but you know gas prices are down. So now are people running into restaurants and forgetting about the snacks and going for larger, more expensive items? The answer to both of my questions is there will be some shifts back to conventional consumption, but the snack thing is real and it's here to stay because it speaks directly to shifts in lifestyles, in the whole sort of digital world that we find ourselves operating in. So another plus for pork. There are, as you folks know, and this is where I get to the discussion of challenges, however, some real potential obstacles to putting more pork on the plate. I have a wonderful job. Folks, I eat and then I talk about it for a living. I don't know, how did this ever happen? But I've been doing it now for, over 25 years, and at no time ever have I seen or heard so much noise in our food environment, so much activism. I regret greatly on all of our behalves that our food system has become so politicized. I don't feel that that's necessarily a good thing. As you take a look, though, this is just, every day I'm reading and I'm seeing, and there's new buzzwords and hot buttons that sort of emerge. As you take a look at some of these things, though, I think a couple things come to mind. The first is that much of the activism and the resulting demands are driven by emotion, by feeling. That doesn't mean I'm downgrading their importance. But as you see this list, and you folks know this in your community, there's very little going on here that is subject to USDA standards of identity, right? There is a standard of identity for organic. Somebody tell me the standard of identity for sustainability. That's a hot button. What is it? What about eco-friendly? What exactly? Who has defined and decided that? So there's just a huge amount of noise. Now, certainly, within that larger area of food activism, the whole area of animal issues, what some people are calling animal rights, animal welfare. Again, this is, I'm talking to the choir on this one, because you folks in the pork industry really came under fire for this. You were, I'm sorry to say, kind of on the leading edge of this with the whole gestation crate. But now it's everywhere in the industry, and you can see that no matter where you sit in the food chain in this country, whether you're a Hellman's or a Smithfield, the manufacturer, Hellman's the largest user of eggs, that's why they're up there for their minis, or whether you're a supermarketer, or whether you're a restaurant chain, doesn't matter. What about Chipotle, right? Just in the last week or so, extraordinary. The supplier in question, I didn't see a name, I don't know who it is not meeting our standards of animal welfare. We're not going to substitute for pork for our carnitas. That's about 7% of their sales. We're not going to substitute. We're pulling it out of our stores until our supplier comes back into line with our expectations. That's a big deal. Now I'm an outsider for all intents and purposes in terms of your industry. As I take a look at the issues impacting American agriculture at this moment, it seems to me that there are two that you are aware of that you must be responding to smartly. First has to do with GMOs. This isn't just relative to the pork industry. This is relative to anybody practically who's engaged in American agriculture. Before I even put you on this slide, just a quick update, because I know you folks track this. But most of the regulatory activity at this point around GMOs has been carried out at the state level, right? And it has to do with labeling GMO ingredients on packages. The 4 states to date that have defeated those initiatives are Washington, Oregon, California, and Colorado. In the first 3, Washington, Oregon, and California, they will be going back. In Washington State, they're going to go back in again. It was the most expensive statewide referendum in the history of the state. Oregon, as you all know, went through a recount just over about 3 weeks ago now because the vote was so close. They're going to relaunch. In Vermont, as you also know, the voters did in fact approve a GMO labeling initiative. The governor has signed it. It's being challenged in the courts. I read yesterday it will probably be put into, I'm going to assume that the challenges will not prevail. It will probably be enacted within the next 18 months or so. Which brings me to, after that quick update, again, I apologize, I don't want to tell you all what you already know, but I want to get us on the same page here. I thought this was particularly appropriate because I'm standing in front of you in the home of General Mills, and you know how this went a year ago. My goodness gracious, I never heard of GMO Inside. I've never heard of that group. It's a subgroup of a larger organization called Green America. Waged a digital campaign. Remember, when you're talking digital, to a great extent, your audience now will be a younger, not exclusively, I want to be careful, but this is right in the wheelhouse of the millennials, Generation Y. And you see what happened. They pressured General Mills to change the formulation of Cheerios. Cheerios is the #1 best-selling cereal in the country. And they prevailed, and General Mills removed GMO cornstarch and sugar, and then put a little thing on the package indicating that. Okay, and what's that last bullet down there? The following quarter, when General Mills' CEO was on the line with his quarterly call with the securities analysts, they said, what's going on? He said, sales are down. Sales are down. What's happening here? Well, first of all, in full disclosure, sales of cereal in general has been drifting downwards. So this is a sort of a long-term trend. But if you monitor the digital conversation afterwards, there was, again, from the consumers, this sense of, what did you do to my cereal? Right? We talked about dietary math. You're taking this and you're doing this and you're pulling. I liked it the way it was. Nonetheless, GMO Inside has announced that they are now going to begin another campaign that would bring all of the Cheerios. This particular bit of activism only applied to the flagship Cheerios, but you know, there's honey, nut, and there's all kinds of flanker products. They're going to attempt to influence General Mills to make changes to all of the flankers. I don't know that I'd hold my breath on that, but this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is a real hot button issue. The most petitioners in USDA history have signed a pro-labeling petition, and in the early part of December, in fact it was the 2nd of December, a petition signed by 700 of the best known and most respected chefs in this country was presented on Capitol Hill, demanding labeling of the use of GMO ingredients. Now, you can see in the middle of my slide, and again, I know you folks are aware of this, but this year a major piece of research will be undertaken. It will look at the long-term effect of GMOs on health. They're going to be using rats in this. You know, this isn't going to be the answer. We all know this, but what I think is important about this is that it is international, and it's what I'm calling impartial, which is to say that no one engaged in this study can have any connection to biotech industries on the one hand, or to anti-GMO behavior on the other. So they'll be looking at impact of GMOs on overall health, on reproduction, on birth defects. They're also going to be doing a separate panel for Monsanto's Roundup product as well. Lower right, J.R. Simplot has come out with a terrific new potato product called Innate. It is a GMO product that uses just potatoes. In other words, this isn't a potato commingled with a rose bush or a goldfish, things that scare people. No. We're talking about what in the old days I think we would have called hybridization, except we're getting a little bit of help now technologically to smooth the way. But you know that these potatoes will resist bruising. That's true. That's good news for both retail grocery, but especially on the restaurant side. And also, they have reduced levels of acrylamides. You all remember that? That was a big scare over a decade ago, some supposed carcinogen. Well, this has been re-engineered now to reduce that. Good news? Well, the morning that I got the press release from Simplot, and I read all about these potatoes, and I thought, that sounds pretty interesting. About 4 hours later, another release came through from McDonald's. We can't touch it. They are not going to go anywhere near it. And if I were McDonald's, I don't blame them. So GMOs on your radar? Yes, indeed, because you will all be impacted. And I don't have to tell you what has been going on in terms of the rise of a sort of, what to call them, journalists, I guess. That's what I'm calling them. Anybody who has one of these, this is my iPhone, is now a journalist. Anybody who has one of these is now in a position to seriously impact how consumers view certain issues, certain products. We've seen the rise of this group, mommy bloggers. Do you know about the mommy bloggers? It's highly coveted. Look at some of these ladies and the number of people who follow and listen to what they say. Every year there is a huge convention of mommy bloggers. Thousands of young moms come and learn how to make their voice heard, how to break through and rise above all the other mommy bloggers. I'm based in Atlanta. Twice a year, there's always some group that, can make money off of this stuff, comes through and runs a 2-day seminar that you pay to learn how to be a mommy blogger. I know you folks, the Checkoff, the report board, has been dealing with these moms as well. And I think this is pretty doggone important because they disseminate information for good and for ill. And on this slide, I have what I consider, and I suspect many of you do as well, the single largest threat to the well-being of animal agriculture in our country today. It's right here on this slide. It's all about antibiotics, hormones, steroids, consumers' fears of those, consumers' lack of understanding how and when they are used. What you're seeing here, again, all this is so recent. The Reuters is a huge press service. And on the 3rd of December, they sent out across the country a very substantial article. You can easily track it online. And it talks about how the FDA finds that antibiotic use is rising. Now, you know that next year, 2016, there will be a voluntary set of criteria put into place that will presumably sort of regulate the usage of the. But look, folks, the amount of medically important antibiotics for use grew 15%. But this second bullet is, this is it, ladies and gentlemen, the minute that you bring children into the conversation, because if you read the article will say that children's ability to fight specific diseases, pneumonia was one, meningitis was another, there were another couple that were mentioned, compromised because the kids are ingesting through food sources all of this stuff so that when the doctor prescribes something, it doesn't work for them. Doesn't work for that. When you bring children, again, I know that the Pork Board has launched some initiatives in this area. I have 2 words for you: double down, because I'm going to tell you truly, I get really exercised about this on your behalf. And my brother happens to be in the small 48 head of cattle in northern Illinois. It's going to bring you to your knees. It's going to bring you to your knees. LFTB, you know what that stands for? You know, pink slime, right? This goofball Jamie Oliver, this chef, gives this half-baked exposure on TV, and not much happened until a mommy blogger in Houston by the name of Bettina Siegel. Not just a mommy blogger, she's a lawyer, which is really kind of a scary combination, starts a petition. And the next thing you know, it's, what are they feeding? They're feeding pink slime to whom? School kids. Go back a decade before that. Remember irradiation? I work with chefs. We were all really excited because the food safety thing is so critical. A lot of mistakes were made in marketing that technology. But when did it fall off the rails? Where was all that radioactive beef going, ladies and gentlemen? School food service. Here it is. Now, I realized as I'm standing here and looking at that picture of that hog, the article from Reuters did not specifically single out pork. I apologize. I don't want you to think that. But it did specifically speak to animal agriculture. And, well, you're hearing me on this. But whatever you're doing, do more of it and don't wait. Restaurant chains. You're being kind of surrounded here. I follow restaurant trends for a living. The notion of clean foods. In the last 18 months, this has been the #1 fastest growing menu trend. And if you look down the left-hand side of the slide, you see some of the largest and or most influential restaurant chains in the business. At the very bottom there, 2 weeks ago, HSUS sent out a press release congratulating Starbucks for introducing the single most comprehensive set of animal welfare objectives in the restaurant industry. At about that same time, it was right after the first of the year, I saw another press release from a group that I had not previously been aware of. I was embarrassed to admit that, called UFSA, United Food Service Alliance, that covers the top 10 school districts, saying that effective immediately, no more antibiotic-free chicken. We need to feed our kids the best. So, I know you're hearing me. I'm going to get off of it, but this is just bigger than both of us. You've got to keep your eyes and your ears open. Listen to what people are saying, particularly from the digital perspective. You've got to get ahead on this. And I think that you can and you are. Do more of it. Appropriate advocates. Look, here's, if I may say, here's who I think you don't want speaking on your behalf, like the Secretary of Agriculture. Don't have anybody from the government, right? Consumers don't believe those folks. I don't believe. Do you believe the government? No. So, you don't want that. But mommy bloggers, chefs who are enlisted chefs love you. That's the second half of my presentation, so I'll get to it shortly. Chefs love you. Recognize, again, that there are a lot of emotional underpinnings here. Pay special attention to the moms with kids. But remember, and I'm going to say this to you many times before I finish this presentation, farms trump factories, right? Everybody's afraid of factory and industrial agriculture. You guys go right back to the farm. Be very smart about how you leverage that. All right. This is great news. I'm taking you from the obstacle back to the biggest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is so darned exciting. It's the return of what I'm calling real foods. You see Exhibit A here. Butter consumption today is up 40% over where we were a decade ago. People cannot get enough of it. Why? You see that third bullet? Why are you eating butter? Well, because it's wholesome, it's pure. There aren't a lot of other ingredients. When I look at the package, it says whole milk, it might say salt. I understand that. This is a wonderful sort of 1-2 punch because consumers are getting it. Chefs, again, chefs chefs never gave up on butter. But now you've got this push. You pork folks can jump on on the bandwagon. And again, on your behalf, I'm charmed and delighted to see some of this. Lard reappearing. This is sort of a hipster place, but influential in Chicago. Bang Bang Pie Shop. And the folks there, and again, lard, the chefs never went away from it. But now, of course, we can bring it into the open. It's not a trans fat. We understand where it came from. And I like this. We proudly use leaf lard. When they put that up, there was a sign that went up in the shop, and they put it up, and boy, there was pushback of lard. Now, you see, they're talking about what it is. They're explaining leaf versus whether it comes from the belly or the back. They're actually, as you can see, selling it for takeout as well. Boom. Great opportunity. This whole saturated fat thing, I don't want to say too much about it. Again, I know you folks follow it probably more closely than I do, but you know the book came out last spring, The Big Fat Surprise, and the author talked about this lethal mix here of personal ambition, of bad science, of politics, of bias that demonized animal fat, that took it out of our diets, so that now dietitians are saying, in many cases, we need to put a little fat back in our diet. But what's happened? What has happened? Since that time, we're eating 25% more carbs. We're consuming more trans fats, Crisco. We're consuming more sugar. And what has happened to our health? Right? So now I'm indicating in my headline, the jury is out. It's going to be slow, because remember, we've had 5 decades of Americans being told not to eat, not to consume animal fats. So it's going to take time, but it is going to change. And pork is going to be right up there leading the charge. I love this nose-to-tail cuisine. Isn't this just great? Don't you love this? As we move through the recession in particular, this notion of using everything. You folks that were at the reception last night, holy smokes, there were ears and trotters and all kinds. Butchers. The New York Times says butchers are the new rock stars. Yeah, following on the heels of chefs, they're seen as experts. They represent, again, a real kind of authentic, a return to real foods, lower left. That's a small chain. I don't know that butcher shops are going to make a huge comeback, but I'm interested to see them coming online. This one's near me. In Atlanta, you walk in, it's just the way it should be. These beautiful showcases, it's like going to a jewelry store, right? That pork loin is just exquisite. When you look at it, there's experts in white jackets behind to help you out. Perfectly well done. And you see how that carries through to the restaurant side. Beginning to use this terminology now, porterhouse, elevating this cut. Look at the bone. I'm going to show you a lot of that. And one last comment on the subject of real foods. I was interested to see this bit of data. Microwave ovens are kind of running out of steam. It's a very, very mature category, but there's not a good replacement level here. And as new households are being formed, they don't seem to be incorporated. And running alongside that, similar data on microwave foods, particularly microwave popcorn, which is kind of the leading indicator there, has been in decline. But what has been growing are appliances that allow some level of involvement. Consumers want to say we cooked. Be very careful here. We're not talking about scratch cooking, but we are talking about some level of hands-on. I've been very surprised at the comeback of canning, home canning from ball canning. Last August, the New York Times business section ran a story on mason jars. Sales of mason jars have gone up 250% over the last 7 years. Mason jars, right? Sort of back to the future here because it's perceived as real. And the other leg of this is this notion, when we're talking about real foods, that consumers want to know the story of their food. That sounds kind of lame. I sound like Dr. Phil when I'm up here. We want to know the story of our food. But what I mean is they want to know the source. They want some reassurance. They want some kind of connection. So whether it's through a farmer's market or, you walk into a place as big as Walmart, but there'll be a sign that says the organics area. Consumers are responding to that. Restaurant chains are too. They've been beaten up so badly over the last decade. Culver's, very good, best in class out of, I'm sure you know them, out of Wisconsin. Craig Culver, now doing commercials where he's in the field with the dairy farmer who provides some of the milk that goes into some of his cheese or his cheese curds. Wendy's did a whole digital campaign in the strawberry fields. They were using fresh strawberries. Domino's threw out their pizzas a few years ago. Now they tell you where the cheese comes from. The Durham, North Dakota wheat that we use in our crust. McDonald's, they can't do anything right, but they are trying so darn hard. And they've been doing a lot of work with local farmers. Here's a potato supplier, and they talk about what you folks in this room can talk about, right? I mean, we're real people. Some of you have been in this business for generations, making a connection. Here from Red Lobster, you know, that shrimp promotion they've got going on now. That shrimp doesn't come out of some, I don't know, some prefab fact. No. Here's human beings on a boat. They're making a connection. Here, I love this. This is an independent restaurant out of Fort Worth. How do you know it's out of Fort Worth? Well, because it's chili rubbed, and because what I'm not showing you here is those beans are referred to as cowboy beans. But look at the story. Consumers want to know the story. Look what they're telling you. They're telling you it's got Texas flavor. They're telling you it's heritage. And by the way, can you see they're serving it in a kind of skillet? Well, that doesn't make it real, right? Telling a story with pork. So what are the implications here? The quality definition is changing. We want real foods. Hello, pork. This is right where you sit. Powerful consumer drivers here. That's why I'm spending time on it this morning, because it's not just one segment of the population. It's not just millennials. It's millennials plus boomers plus Generation X. We're all on board with this. The convenience pendulum is swinging back. It's not just easy at any cost anymore. Again, I think that's great for you, because I'm not sure that you pork people think that microwaves were the best thing that ever happened to you, right? Well, now we're kind of moving away. You want to get out ahead. You want to tell your story. Remember, again, farms trump factories. All right. The next batch of material, and I'm going to move through this a little bit more quickly. This is meant to dazzle you. Remember, I talked at the outset, I was going to take a strategic look, and then I was going to get very tactical. I want to show you all the ways that your product works hand in glove with the big food trends of the moment, starting with comfort foods. You know, if you're an older consumer, these are foods that you recognize, they're nostalgic. If you're a younger consumer, you're frequently being introduced to them for the first time, but they're familiar foods, particularly handhelds. There have been anthropological studies done on how we respond to eating with our hands. It's very basic. It's very comforting. But you see some updates here in terms of the flavor touches. Here, Wendy's. 80% of Wendy's sales. Wendy's has been singularly successful in a very difficult category. It's McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. Wendy's has been the success story. 80% of their sales come from premium products. Who says you can't sell a better product when times are tough? Wendy's gets 80% of their sales and a lot of their success. What's the story here with this wonderful pork promotion? Pork shoulder. And if you look at the promotional pieces of the website, we smoke it for 8 to 10 hours. Here, this is a brew pub chain. Gordon Biersch was actually a brewery first out on the West Coast, and then they got in the restaurant business. So in the spring, the story here is you go in, you see they're making the lager on site, and then they're using it to steam these Adore. This is so cute, and these are these small bites. They put the ale into, or the lager rather, into the mustard. Here, my goodness gracious, bologna makes a comeback. On the left, Hardee's. Don't know that you know them. I am headquartered in Atlanta, so I know that Southerners claim fried bologna as their sort of their unofficial national dish. Anybody in the country can eat it. But I like what Hardee's does. They take the product and they put it on a biscuit. Boom! That speaks right to that Southern influence, doesn't it? But it's also available. Go upmarket now to an independent in suburban Detroit, The Root, and you see here his sandwich. using an artisanal, freshly baked bun, of course, and house-made green chili mustard. Very well done. And this from Cracker Barrel. You know, Cracker Barrel plays to a value-conscious or even a more, may I say, price-sensitive, frequently, audience. But you see how they plug right into that wonderful identification with comfort foods and how they bring their chef into it. Because restaurant chains at all levels now are kind of leaving culinary fingerprints. These aren't just pork chops, folks. These are apricot glazed, right? Somebody in the kitchen knows what they're doing. And what do we plate it with? Pecan wild rice. Nicely done. Does pork work with ethnic foods? Well, duh. Yeah. And, you know, the demand for ethnic foods has risen steadily. It was the middle part of the 1960s when we changed our immigration policies and we opened up the door to immigration from Latin countries and from Asian countries, all of whom, by the way, like pork. In the meantime, we went through a culinary revolution. Chefs love you, folks. They are really good advocates for you. We watch food TV. Now we think about ethnic foods, and pork is moving right along with it. This is another great example of how to decommoditize. Del Taco. Fast food, tacos, 99 cents, $1.99, you get it out the door. It's for them, that's a very low margin business. How do you add value? How do you hike your price point? You go with authentic carnitas, and then look what else you do. You slow braise it. That's a real home run. Here, I've been interested to see a number of analysts have suggested that the hot food trend for next year will be Italian. Italian! It's already one of the big three in this country, Italian, Chinese, and Mexican. But what we're talking about here is authentic now. It's going to be real Italian, Sherry's out of the Pacific Northwest, using the term street food, which resonates. That's what says it's authentic, because if you were running down the street in Rome and you just wanted to grab, we'd grab a hot dog or a pretzel off of a cart, you'd grab porchetta. I did an article about a year ago, I think it's on LinkedIn still, on how porchetta was the hot protein. Everybody just loves it. Here I'm taking you way uptown, Carrabba's, a dinner house. Now you've got a double dose of pork, don't you? You've got the prosciutto, you've got the tenderloin, and again, these culinary fingerprints. This is sophisticated stuff, but it's at a mass market price, very nicely put together. Here, related to the Italian trend has been Mediterranean, and that's really kind of where noodles comes in here. Note the use of pig in the title. I'm going to get to that. Boy, you guys are in a nice place with pig. Note also that Noodles has jumped on board with the clean menu trend. Pork naturally raised. Flatbread, by the way, if you haven't been following this, is sort of the better for you cognate of pizza. Here, Asian cuisine for most Americans in the middle class, in the mass market rather, is kind of the biggest stretch. It's the least familiar to us. And so here at CPK, Chef Brian Sullivan has kind of made a career of introducing us to unfamiliar flavors by putting them on a pizza crust. If you want American consumers to eat anything, folks, either put it on a pizza crust or throw it in a bed of pasta. We are won over. And so here we've got Korean. He's using barbecue pork. He's got some wonderful spicy flavors going on there. He's got julienne pears. Here, I love this from Which Wich. A banh mi. It's Vietnamese. And this is a great success story, and that's why I was able to get this beautiful picture from them. They ran an LTO last quarter, LTO, limited time offer, to send this up as a trial balloon. It was the most successful they've ever run. It is now a permanent menu item. What is it that is making this wonderful sandwich authentically Vietnamese? Well, it's the marinade in the pork, and the pork has been nicely raised. It's very, very tender pork, but in addition to the flavor, Southeast Asian cuisine in general is based on a contrast of textures. So the pork is going to be lovely and tender, but they're going to be using fresh carrots, fresh cucumbers, so you get a crunch. You want the soft and you want the crunch. And you see as well there that beautiful green You're seeing some pepper, but also cilantro, which is a very characteristic ingredient. How about premiumization? Can you sell premium pork? Well, yeah, of course. The trend here, it goes way, way back. Again, I love that I'm standing in Minneapolis and talking about this because I think it started very much with a company based here. Premium trend. Consumers expect affordable luxury. They don't just want their money's worth, they want more than their money's worth. And a very good retailer here in the Twin Cities by the name of Target, decades ago, hired some big-name architects to create things like tea kettles for $12 or $15 for the mass market. You know, they went into the fashion thing as well. Restaurants have jumped on board too. Over the last decade, premiumization has been one of the three big menu trends that has been driving menu R&D forward. This is Chicago, independent, called the Boarding House. Look at this chop, bone in again. Yep, Berkshire. Now this is Alpana Singh. She's revealing the breed. Look at the nice flavor notes. That last one, the butternut squash agridu, that's a sweet and sour sauce. Look at that nice price point. Here, you don't have to pay a lot to have a premium pork experience at Jimmy John's, right? The ultimate porker, using that expression. It happens to be freshly baked bread. Yeah, the produce is nice and fresh. What are you buying here? You are buying as much ham and as much pork as you can possibly want to consume. Here from Papa Murphy's, trying to break out of, again, this commodity. You know, if you're in the pizza business, you folks know this, the big three, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, Domino's, and what do when you turn on TV? You get a big one for $7.99. You get two for $9.99. They play on price. They've commoditized their products. Here's Papa Murphy saying, hang on, this is deliberately positioned now up above that. We're not getting into the price wars. And they're avoiding it by adding premium touches. This is Chef Karan Harris. She's a one-woman wrecking crew for spicy fennel sausage. She's used it. There was another chain, I think, based here called Bukad Bethel. She was their opening chef. She went all over the place with spicy fennel sausage. Here, gosh, look at this. Oh, come on. Longhorn steak. This is Chef Kurt Hankins. Look at this. Fantastic, beautiful tenderloin. Look at the flavor notes here, bourbon and molasses. Now look at his technique. He brines it. Boom. Isn't that making it worthwhile? And then I didn't know if I should put this here or maybe back in my comfort food sections. He's got homemade spoon bread as well. What a fantastic culinary fingerprints. This is brilliantly done. Here, high-end Brazilian steakhouse. Look, again, they're talking about center cut. They're showing the bone. Again, that's what makes it real. It's what makes it authentic. Here, Texas Land and Cattle. Out of the state of Texas, again, this is a steakhouse primarily. But I love this. And look at the price point, $44.99. This is a mass market chain. It is for two, and you can certainly graze on this. Texas flavor notes, yep, it's house smoked. Quail, absolutely, that's indicative of Texas. But now look at the inclusion of this wonderful pork loin in a whiskey demi-glaze. Well done. With all of this wonderfully indulgent stuff, running alongside that, as you know, is a very real trend now for better-for-you foods. And it is real, and it's going to stick. Because younger consumers consuming better for them because they think it's the right thing, they think it's the ethical thing. Older consumers consuming better-for-you foods because we want to maintain our health, our vitality. How smart is this from Cracker Barrel, using pork to get their foot in the door with better for you? And remember what we talked about. It's not about what you take out, is it? It's what you put in. So what did they put in? They put in campfire seasoning. They put in an orange mustard glaze. That's pretty nice. And it's bone in. Gosh, that's even better. And if you want this, it's only 420 calories as shown. Can you get it with a double order of French fries? Of course. But they're giving people the opportunity here, and they're using pork as their playing card. Another strategy, hallmarks of better for you are fresh, seasonal, and local. That's how the consumer views this. So here in the Pacific Northwest, The real star of this piece is not the pork. It's okay. Go with me on this. It's the fact that there are fresh blackberries grown in the Northwest. Hugely successful. I'm showing you a pulled pork salad. They did a blackberry pulled pork slider. They did a blackberry pulled pork sandwich. They were selling the stuff for takeout. But it's the halo of health. Here's another halo of health. We don't just love BLT. We love the B so much they're doubling up, right? It's BBLT. How do you give yourself permission to eat this? It's because the tomatoes are local, right? Come on, right? And the other thing, the other reason why, let me just take you back. Here's Kevin Bechtel, the chef at Sherry's. Here's the folks from Corner Bakery. Why they love this? Well, because it's seasonal, it gives you the opportunity to say to the customer, get in here real fast. If you went into Corner Bakery today, that's not available. It's only available when the tomatoes are local and in season. It's that halo of health. Here, we talked about snackifications. You can certainly use pork in many ways in the snack dish, but now look how Starbucks takes this uptown. So there's no sense of being sort of deprived. I mean, this is wonderful. It's indulgent. And here, another dimension of better for you. There are lots of dimensions to this. Chipotle, as you know, leading the charge for humanely raised pork. There will be more restaurant chains and supermarket operators demanding natural pork products. I cannot tell you how far this will go. At this moment, it's antibiotic-free chicken that's kind of been pushed out in front, but do be sensitive to this as well. All right, I'm going to close. And I didn't know how to say this to you exactly, so in my headline, I said pork heritage. But when I was thinking about this presentation, it seems to me that you pork folks have what strategists call an unfair competitive advantage. An unfair competitive advantage. People like pigs. What is this thing with pigs, with people and pigs? These are all current chef-driven, super, super trendy restaurant operations. It's not the prettiest slide. That little green guy in the middle I threw in at the last minute. I was so surprised a hot chef in Atlanta opened a noodle bar. I roared over in the car to see it. I couldn't find it because he didn't have noodles hanging outside the shop. He had this little sign with this little pig. We just somehow, BBB, that's James Beard Award-winning chef John Curran's. This is Big Bad Breakfast out of Birmingham. Up in the upper right, sausage and meat. That's from the hot, super hot Better Burger operator Adam Fleischman out of Los Angeles. Everywhere. We seem to make some kind of a connection with your animals. And so we have lots of, I do work with, cattle people. I like my brother's a cat. I like chickens. But I wouldn't go into a restaurant and expect to see a chicken head on my plate, would I? But here, Maiolinos, this is Danny Myers in New York. I could take you to the Greenhouse Tavern, Jonathan Sawyer, wonderful chef in Cleveland, Chris Cosentino at Encanto in San Francisco, Paul Cahan in Chicago at the Publican, serving pig heads. And the reason that consumers will go for this is because they trust these chefs. These chefs are your advocates. By the way, you're not going to be selling a whole lot of pig heads, but it's just part of this story and the way that people relate to your products. Here, do you know Smith & Wollensky's? It's a steakhouse. It's as high up the chain in the steak world as you can go. I mean, they are meat specialists. And so a year or so ago, I was very surprised to see them introduce this product, Cracklin, right? The connection between your products and true, authentic Southern cuisine. Now, look how they take this uptown. They tell you about the technique. They fry it. Then they use the term cracklin, by the way. That's what caught my attention. And then these wonderful flavor enhancements. But my goodness gracious, it says authentic, it says real. Here's authenticity from another. This is Chef Ryan Farr. He's now in San Francisco. He's now actually, I think, opened a butcher shop. I don't know if he even has his restaurant. But chicharrones, absolutely everywhere. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, somebody saying in some steakhouse, well, here you are, and we're going to have some Black Angus skin tonight? No, it doesn't. It works for you. And ears and feet and pigs is an advantage. The Southern connection so strong. South in the house. Now bacon is not the star of this burger. It's true. But I love that they played with the notion of candied burger. And you see that beautiful milkshake? That's what we call Beam and Bacon. It is a Jim Beam enhanced adult milkshake, and it is garnished with bacon. Very nicely done. Pork and donuts, artisanal donuts are everywhere. And so now, and by the way, the deal with these artisanal donuts is planned scarcity. In other words, Do Right in Chicago, they bake once. So you wait online for a long time to get this, because once it's gone, it's gone. And it's donuts with bacon in, on the right, out of Austin Gordo's, doing what a number of sort of hipster chefs are doing, replacing the bun or the bread altogether with a donut and using it as a carrier for pulled pork. Come on, you folks should be so excited about this. Why is pork everywhere? I was thinking last night, I did 5 trends here for you. I couldn't think of one single food trend where I couldn't make pork work except for vegetarianism. That's an uphill climb for you guys. But otherwise, the versatility, you can go everywhere. And the good news is that you stand up well to more assertive flavors, those ethnic flavors, but you also work with what I think will be the next trend, herbaceous, green herbs, aromatics. A lot of the trends that we're talking about favor you as an ingredient, not necessarily a big primal cut, but in a taco or on a rice bowl. But it's pork, pork, pork. There's a real story to be told here. I encourage you to tell it. Get your face out there. Remember, again, farms trump factories, and you have a story to tell. Let me close. And to do that, I'm going to take you back to where I started. I've been going like a house of fire up here. But I've been doing my job now for quite some time. And I think that the conditions now are better for you than they have ever been, because the market is coming to you. The market wants real foods. Check. The market wants protein. Check. All of those trends we looked at, the market wants ethnic and comfort and premium. You work across the board. You need to communicate. Yes, there are obstacles, but you know, there is perhaps a good side to all of this, because this, now what has become the weapon of choice, right? This means of communication is at your disposal as well. Work with your marketing groups, your marketing teams. Get the word out there. It's a real opportunity for you. The time is right. And remember, again, this is the last time, if you'd like to all say it with me, but farms really do trump factories. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for your time.